Oh, you'll love this. It's so easy. Parmesan smells good. Have you put salt and pepper?
My son came home from school one day and said, "Mummy, what's a billionaire?"
That should be right.
I said, "You know what, sweetheart? It's all just figures in books. You know how we've got shares in Fortescue? It's not real money."
So thank you for rolling my sleeves.
But yeah, of course, now we are reaping the rewards of the dividends.
If it was too perfect, then people would think we just bought them.
We live in a beautiful home and, you know, I have a great life. But the things that are most important, money doesn't buy that. My influence being, don't waste it.
Don't waste.
So we just said, let's give the rest of it away.
And so he stood up and said, well, Andrew Forrest and I have serious track record together.
The decision to give away everything but the personal things and the goods and chattels was really quite an easy decision. You know, let's not die wealthy. What's the point of that?
So I just thought we're having a chat. I thought we're catching up. Okay, so talk to me about you.
Children don't benefit from thinking they're going to inherit a huge amount of money. I think it's a burden.
Nicola's this little soul who fills the house. Not always with joy, but she fills it.
We were all driving, it was like a school pickup or something like that. And it was, hey kids, we're thinking like, we're always going to be there to take care of you and we'll make sure you never starve to death, but we have more money than we need and what do you think about giving it all away? And I mean, how do you say no to that? Which Sydney likes to always joke, like, I don't think it's legally binding to ask a 6-year-old that and take their word for it. But it seemed obvious.
Nicola and Andrew Forrest have been very public in their philanthropy, and that invites a lot of close scrutiny, and not everyone likes the way they've gone about it. You might have questions about the industry they operate in, about the way they've made their money, but clearly they've made a big commitment to supporting a whole range of causes that are unambiguously good.
I'm well aware that we've had a lot of criticism and our children hear the criticisms as well, and maybe sometimes they probably agree with some of the criticisms that people make of us. But what I would say is that no one is more critical than we are of ourselves.
Mum and Dad, I think, have always worked together as a team. So with the enormous success that Dad has had, Mum's always been right there behind him. I think it's an attribute to how strong their marriage is that they can work so entwined and not kill each other. But it is really frustrating to see the media repeatedly always refer to her as Andrew Forrest's wife. While I'm so immensely proud of the work Dad does, it's frustrating when your own work is constantly tied to that.
Some very good advice early on with a great friend who was a media advisor to Andrew at the time. He warned me and he said, I think it's really important, you know, for the children's sake and for your own sake, that you don't ever get photographed with Andrew, because then people won't know who you are. So I did walk 2 steps behind so I would never be in the photographs. It protected me and I didn't want a profile, so that was fine.
For a long time, Mum genuinely believed that the best thing she can do is not take up space in the public eye. And I think something that has shifted in that is realising that she herself could become a lever and a voice for drawing a line in the sand on issues that she's been working on for 2 decades and has seen too little progress on.
I want to talk to you today about what I believe is the greatest travesty facing our nation. More than 20% of our kids have health or developmental vulnerabilities when they start school. As reluctant as I am to be in the public eye, I've decided that if not me, then who? And I also realise that I have the opportunity to speak to people that other people may not have access to. Perhaps I've been dismissed because I'm not to be taken seriously. Perhaps you just think this is a pet hobby for me, something I do to make myself feel useful. Yes, I am motivated by the experiences I've had, both raising and losing children. But my dedication to ensuring that every single child born in Australia gets the best start in life is far more than just a personal quest. I think I grew up in a family where I thought, well, everyone's Everyone's got a fair go in Australia. Australia's a place where we make it easy for everybody and it's up to individuals, and if you don't try hard enough, then that's your own fault. And I have taken that full journey where I realised that actually it's not like that for everybody. I grew up in country New South Wales, Spices Creek, which is between Wellington and Mudgee, on the way to Goolma. And it was sheep and wheat mainly, but we did have some cattle.
Siblings, I think, called her motor mouth. Well, she never stopped talking once she learned.
Nick was fearless, bold, and probably a little bit naughty. Yeah.
Every day I'd say, who wants to come for a ride? And I'd come over to your place.
Because we were the only ones that were horse obsessed, and Gina lost. You know, as a 7 or 8-year-old, she rode over to our house without telling her parents. Turned up at our house, no saddle. I've got a classic photograph of her looking like that. Jodhpurs on, hair not done. What fun times, Nick.
Life was very simple, really. And I was a young and pretty hopeless mother, but we had animals and we had a lot of fun.
We felt like we were wealthy because we had everything we ever needed, but we were very aware that we couldn't afford to buy a lot of things. My elder sisters went off to boarding school. I went to the high school in Wellington because they couldn't afford for 3 of us to go to boarding school at the same time. And in the end, my parents sacrificed everything for our education. They relocated themselves, and my father took odd jobs, and our mother took a job at the school, so that I guess we got reduced fees. So I went to Frensham in year 10. I was 14, nearly 15, and I wasn't out of control, but I was having a lot of fun at the Wellington High School. And in a way, I think it changed my trajectory because I got opportunities that were extraordinary. When I finished school, I went to Canberra for 3 years, and I did a Bachelor of Arts in Secretarial Studies, but it really was like a business degree, and I ended up working in stockbroking. But all the while, I thought, I want to go travelling. So I worked, I travelled a bit, and then I had to work again.
Her jobs were very eclectic. She worked in the eastern suburbs for Susan Renouf as a cook. She worked up in Queensland at the Blue Heeler pub. And she worked in Yorkshire as cooking grass for a family there.
But I wasn't pursuing a career. I was always looking for what am I interested in or what I want to do.
I can remember meeting Nicola like this morning. We were holding a housewarming party for all of Mum's friends, and Mum's friend's daughter was Nicola. This bouncy, energetic, feminine form came dancing across the lawn, and I was in a dressing gown still putting drinks out. Yeah, very casual, thinking, well, we're out in the bush, half an hour late.
I had no idea who he was, and clearly wasn't reading any newspapers because he'd already made a splash. Tousle-headed stockbroking legend is what they used to refer to him then. So I, just being me, walked across the lawn and went, "Hi, I'm Nicola. Can I give you a hand?" I was so embarrassed to be early. I was mortified that we were so early. "Can I give you a hand?"
I said, look, glasses here, drinks are over there. I ran off, had a shower, slammed the jeans on, and when I came back, she was serving drinks. So I thought, oh, what a girl.
I couldn't stop thinking about this guy, just thinking he was very different to anyone I'd ever met. Sort of a big personality, but very genuine. We got engaged and were planning to get married in the January 1991. And Andrew got cold feet.
I thought, hang on, this is coming at me like a steam train. I don't see any rush on this. And so I said, listen, let's call off the date.
And I said, you know what? I actually find being engaged, you're neither one thing nor the other. And I think if you want to put it back, let's just call the whole thing off.
I'm not one to bluff, so I said, sure, if that's what you want, I'll roll with it.
I then said to Andrew, look, I'm going to go to Europe. Please just don't contact me.
But then Andrew followed, and then they travelled a bit together, which we didn't like the idea of. You know, it didn't sound like a good thing.
When I reached out, we just had a torrent of communication between us. The love didn't stop for a day, really.
And he proposed to me again. I remember my parents saying, "Are you sure this is what you want?" And I said, "You know what, I know I'll never be bored if I'm with Andrew."
Andrew Forrest is really part of one of the most influential families in Western Australia.
Welcome to Christmas Creek. Thanks, buddy. Good to be known.
His great-great-uncle, John Forrest, was an explorer who opened up remote parts of Western Australia.
Andrew Forrest began as a stockbroker, but he always had big dreams and ambitions to build a business. In that sense, he's a classic entrepreneur.
I have been very involved along the way with all the projects that Andrew has done. You know, he always says I'm his biggest critic, but he does listen to me. So I do get the opportunity to say to him, what about this or what about that? And same with Anaconda.
In true Forrest tradition, Andrew raised over $1 billion to build Anaconda, Western Australia's largest nickel plant.
Andrew Forrest really came to prominence when he led Anaconda Nickel, a classic high-risk Western Australian mining project.
I'm delighted to be associated with such a tremendously successful Australian venture.
At one stage there, it was looking like a sensational success story, but then they got to a point where they hit some technical problems.
In an 11th hour compromise, Mr. Forrest has agreed to step down as chief executive.
Ultimately, Glencore, big global player, took over the business and he was ousted. And a lot of people lost money as a result of that, and it really tarnished his reputation.
With Anaconda Nickel going pear-shaped, there was a sense of shame in a way because there'd been such excitement about the opportunities it created. And so there was a sense of we've failed a lot of people, and Andrew always felt really responsible for that.
Through all this pretty tumultuous time in Perth with Anaconda, Nick and Andrew were also suffering a great personal loss, which they had to deal with.
We were living in Perth and I got pregnant. She was due the 2nd of June, 1988. So I'd been preparing Grace and Sophia, that you've got a little sister coming and, you know, Mummy's going in to have the baby. We thought, oh, we'll call her Tilly, Matilda. Perfect pregnancy, whole way through. I was due to have a doctor's appointment on the Monday, which was the 22nd. And on the weekend, I'd had some contractions. I was pretty uncomfortable. When I went into the appointment, I said, oh, I didn't think I was going to make this appointment. And he said, why not? And I said, because I haven't felt the baby move for 24 hours. And, you know, there's a saying that when a baby goes quiet, it's just before it's going to be born. And he was going, and then he went, oh, this machine must be broken. I'm going to send you down the road for an ultrasound. I can't hear the baby. And at that moment, I thought, somehow I knew. And, you know, nothing wrong with her. Perfect, beautiful little girl. Stillborn.
When Mum came home from hospital without the baby, it was quite confusing. And I just remember Dad making our breakfast for a while, not seeing Mum in the mornings. So I think that loss obviously was devastating for my mother and really formative in our family.
We actually had a post-mortem done because we wanted to know if there was anything other we could help other people or that would to come to terms ourselves. You immediately blame yourself. You think, what have I done wrong? Something's happened.
Matilda really was a fabulous gift, not ours to hold, but whenever we're asked about our children, certainly in a quiet environment, we'll say, yeah, we've got 4 kids, 3 on earth and 1 in heaven.
We were so blessed to then have Sydney. So we did have another one quite quickly afterwards. And that took a great step of faith from me because what I didn't want was to be fearful.
Deep family tragedies like that can really challenge relationships. It was a really tough period. And, you know, it just made me love the girl more going through that deep sense of tragedy and coming out the other side still absolutely united.
Andrew Forrest is staking his family's future on an ambitious new mining venture. It's a gamble few would dare.
Me having to go overseas to settle this.
Early 2000s and the China boom is starting to come on the horizon, and Forrest could see that there would be massive demand for iron ore. The Pilbara was just right for a new player to come along. So he raised the capital to develop the mines, to build the railways, and then the port infrastructure as well. I mean, it was breathtakingly ambitious.
I remember saying, and how much is that going to cost? You know, because we'd just been through Anaconda. And he said, about $1 billion, or I think he might have even said $2 billion. And I just went, oh my God. And I said, just one more project, please, just one more project.
That was typical of Nick saying, look, I want you to be cautious, I want you to be careful, but hey, let's have a real crack at this.
If successful, he'll become a powerful figure on the national landscape. But he's also risking millions and the family's reputation.
If you think 200 million is possible, I would go for it.
They managed to get their first mine opened in 2006 and second one in 2008. So absolutely record time, with the investors sort of breathing down their necks saying, are you going to do it? Are you actually going to make it? And they did.
Over the last couple of years, iron ore has been on a roll and Fortescue has delivered amazing profits, and they're now ranked as one of the top 10 companies on the ASX.
Today, if you take the Fortescue share price, the value of their wealth is somewhere around 25 billion.
So that does make the Forrest the second wealthiest family in the country after Gina Reinhardt.
How long are you going to be in Canberra?
Well, I'm still trying to work out how to get there, but I'm hoping to get there. It honestly feels a little bit surreal, in as much as that I don't feel myself as a billionaire that I'm any different in my attitudes. A collaboration with the National Gallery around Earth, and so for the fire and flood resilience.
UCB was a term that I coined a few years ago. It stands for undercover billionaire.
It's going to be their major exhibition for 2020.
The UCB came from the fact that she'd be encouraging Dad and Sydney and I to eat a week-old expired yogurt because it'd be wasted. And the UCB does not like waste in any form. And I believe quite genuinely, if their net worth was where it is now, or if it was absolutely nothing, she'd be the same on that.
There reaches a certain point where you don't need any more money. So we've been members of the Giving Pledge for almost 10 years.
Earlier this year, mining billionaire Andrew Forrest became the first Australian to join the Global Giving Pledge. Like Bill and Melinda Gates, he and his wife Nicola are now dedicating most of their wealth to philanthropy.
The Giving Pledge was established by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. You had to be a billionaire to join the club, and you had to commit to giving away more than half of your wealth before you died.
Are going to give 99% away.
The first Australians to join the Giving Pledge were Andrew and Nicola Forrest.
Twiggy Forrest and his wife are donating $65 million to higher education in Western Australia.
It's not every day you get to make a donation like this.
I think it's super important that people are public, because I think it's the only way we can get role models.
$400 million, the largest donation by a living Australian.
The mechanics of giving away wealth in one's lifetime, the way Nicola and Andrew Forrest have done it is primarily to create a foundation, in this case, Minderoo Foundation. We have 11 initiatives, like trying to rid the world of modern-day slavery, collaborating against cancer, trying to end Indigenous disparity. Today, there's over $2.5 billion in the foundation.
Good morning, everybody.
Last year, we spent $129 million, and this year, we plan to spend somewhere between $150 and $180 million.
Really, the DNA of our organisation is about helping empower people and improve the situation for others.
When you look at the scale of the work they're doing, they're giving away more than $100 million a year today, which is extraordinary. You know, on any absolute scale, $100 million is a lot of money.
You have to make sure you know who's already doing what in the community.
When you look at what they've committed to do, the challenge that they are building towards is to giving closer to $1 billion a year away.
They understand what the problems are and they need to articulate them.
The great challenge for them is to now deliver on giving away the majority of their wealth to needy causes that they care about over their lifetime.
Given your fortune stands at around $25 billion, there's still a long way to go before that pledge is satisfied, isn't there?
Yeah, well, we're hoping we're going to have a long lifetime. So it's within our lifetime. I think as we have scaled up with our initiatives and we have built the capacity within our organisation, you will see that things will change. It's not just about giving away money, it's about making impact.
So what's your name? What's your name? My name's Nick.
The most important thing that we are doing at Minderoo Foundation is Thrive by 5, to help every Australian child reach their full potential.
We're doing single discipline therapy and we just know that we can do so much more if we're able.
I think the cornerstone for my mum and my dad in their work is that the way in which they lost Matilda was completely out of their control. And I think that is what definitely drove them to think, what is in our ability to change? What can we control in outcome for other children?
Enrolments have dropped a lot over the last 12 months.
With Matilda, the thing that I had absolutely learnt was what happens in utero does affect the trajectory of a child. 90% of the brain is formed in those first 5 years. And more than 20% of children arrive at school developmentally delayed here in Australia, which is just unspeakable. If they have had hearing problems or speech problems or they haven't had the basics in phonics and they're unable to continue to learn, then by the time they're 8 or 9, you've lost them in the system. And by the time they're 12 or 13, they're completely disengaged.
We do believe that this is the issue that the next government that leads this country, if they take this issue on, they're the ones that are going to be there.
We need to have an overarching system that supports families.
We need to value those people that look after our most vulnerable.
Somewhere you can reach out for help, but you only have to go to one place. And then, you know, you're being looked after and then you don't fall out of the system.
What do you do on your holidays?
I've seen the power of such an approach on a visit to Chalice, a primary school just outside of Perth.
Who would like to read a book on their holidays?
Chalice Primary School headmistress Lee Mezzamucci refused to accept that her children were going to be flatline below the state NAPLAN results purely because of the postcode of where they've grown up.
Can I come to your house and have lunch and a
We decided as a foundation that we would support her work.
Finally, it was not me.
What Lee did was create a centre on the school grounds for the young mothers and families that were coming to the school so that she could help those families prepare those children for school. And she made it possible for any service that those families might need to be available at that school or a referral system.
Put your hat on your beautiful hair that's been...
In practical terms, what it means is child health nurse on site, full-time. For families who are ready, they then start to coming to any of our parenting courses, which leads into our pre-kindergarten program.
There's lots of opportunities to talk about all the food.
And the most astonishing part is that a school where they had never met the state average for their NAPLAN results, within 2 or 3 years, was not only meeting the state average, it was exceeding it. The science clearly shows that we have to get it right in the first 5 years. A fleeting window of time that science says is pivotal to the emotional, cognitive and social development of your child.
Some really interesting work that we did with Nicola was looking at the cost of late intervention. So what happens if we don't address the issues in early childhood? And what we found was that it was billions of dollars.
$5.9 billion for child protection, $2.7 billion for youth crime, $1.3 billion for mental health. How on earth can politicians in this country pretend there is no problem here? It's a ridiculous agenda, as it always is when you come to Canberra,
We are going from meeting to meeting to all the ministers that we could get meetings with to give each and every one of them our budget submission for Thrive by 5 and to talk through how we really believe the country needs to move forward. I lay awake last night, didn't get a lot of sleep, thinking, you know, am I going to speak or say things? But I'm better when I get a bit emotional.
What Nicola is now specifically campaigning for is an increase in paid parental leave, substantial pay rises for childcare workers, and she wants high quality preschool education for 3-year-olds to be accessible for all Australians.
Yeah, on the way.
White tea, please.
Nicola Forrest is only just one of many voices that are campaigning in this area.
I've known lots of the education ministers because I've been coming here for a long time.
I think that whole area of women's issues, as they're known, perhaps unfairly, is going to have a fairly big role in the election.
Obviously, we'd encourage you if they don't, you know, in the budget reply would be a nice place to do it.
One of the high-profile recruits they've had is Jay Weatherall. He was the Labor Premier in South Australia.
As is 3-year-old, 2 years of preschool. So we did get into meetings that others haven't been able to get into on the strength of her, I think, passion, assertiveness, and frankly, the resources that she can bring to bear behind the campaign.
Are you able to give us a commitment that going forward into this election that this is going to be one of your top priorities?
Look, it is going to be one of our top priorities. There's no doubt about it.
Whatever differences people might have with the Forrests, I think they respect the fact that they don't just want to do things to make themselves feel better, they want to actually shift the dial.
You're on the payroll though.
Sure, but, you know, I've got lots of things I could do. I'm doing this because it means something.
If you're looking for reasons to criticise the Forrests, there's no shortage of things that people can latch onto. They were criticised a lot for not paying enough tax in the early days, but now they are a big taxpayer. Some people don't like the mining industry. The industry has high carbon emissions, but look, the business is pivoting far more rapidly than most of their peers towards green energy. There's also been criticism about the relationship between Fortescue and Aboriginal traditional owners up in the Pilbara. I think this is a bigger issue for the Forrests.
Negotiations over royalties broke down several years ago, with FMG's founder Andrew Forrest saying he didn't want to create mining welfare.
Mining has impacted on our country very badly, I'd say. The Yindjibarndi people, before we was all one, and now it has divided us.
Fortescue Metals has gone and mined Yindjibarndi land, even though it has no agreement with the traditional owners.
The Yindjibarndi Aboriginal Corporation has pursued Fortescue through the courts, all the way to the High Court, and has been successful.
This has been a very long, ongoing, divisive piece of litigation. It's a tremendous victory for the Yindjibarndi people.
The ruling paves the way for the traditional owners to pursue a multi-million-dollar compensation payout.
Some of the dealings that the companies had are really not that commendable. This is something I think that the Forrests need to think about addressing, because if they want to have this great legacy, what's happened with the Yindjibarndi, I think, is a pretty serious blemish on the record.
We've employed more skilled Aboriginal people than any other company in history, and given out more business contracts than the Australian government to Aboriginal companies by a multiple, and changed the lives of thousands, and I'm very happy with that record.
People can criticise how money is made and how it's given away, and I would actually say that our eldest daughter, Grace, has always said, you know, philanthropy can look like a dirty thing, because if people have made money in a bad way, then it's their excuse to make themselves feel better by giving it away. I do not see us in that camp at all. We are determined to have sustainable and ethical businesses.
We're just going to get a group shot, so if I can get you to wander over this way.
I think Nicola Forrest is at a very active and interesting stage of her life.
It's absolutely beautiful, isn't it?
She is the convener of Women for Progress, and it is a very interesting group of women from a diverse range of backgrounds.
Socially distancing, of course.
We're not all here today, but all from all political persuasions, all cultural backgrounds, all age ranges.
We all have one voice of a shared story, and it's about gender equality, and it's about putting women at the forefront of the next election.
If we can all get together and form a consensus on what we think are the priorities for women and to make our country a better place, then, you know, what better time?
If not now, then when?
Yeah. So yes,
It's got to be
I
now.
am hopeful.
What she is doing, I think, is taking on a much greater public leadership role.
Perfect.
So I think we are going to be seeing a lot more of Nicola Forrest, the person.
And thank you very much. Thank you.